I'm going to be talking about planning 30 days of email content to stay consistent. So it makes me feel good that whether you either have an email list or I know some of us may be considering starting an email list this summer, this is a great place to start. And I'll talk a bit more about this in a second, but this is probably the most common thing that I hear working with clients, talking to business owners, is just the struggle of like knowing what to say to your list. And when you don't know what to say to your list, it's really hard to feel really good about what your email list, even if your emails are good. You're just like, I don't know, feeling scattered and feeling like, does anyone like what I'm sending? Um, and also, it's just really hard to stay consistent when you're depending on a really last minute stroke of inspiration to come by and hit you with a good idea. So, with all that in mind, my name is Branda. I'm the owner of the Relevant Collective. As I mentioned, I used to be a classroom teacher. I taught for 5 years, teaching ELA and a mix of grade levels from fifth all the way to 12th. Tried it all, decided it wasn't my jam. And so I went the entrepreneur route. And now I focus on email copywriting and email strategy. So I've worked with over 70 plus business owners, 95% of them in the TPT space, whether they are, have memberships, courses, or they're just sticking to selling on TPT. I've helped them kind of strategize their email list. And really my focus is on helping you turn your email list into a really warm, engaged crowd, because there's no point in having an email list and having people there if ultimately at the end of the day they're not wanting to buy, right? Like that's the goal. Like we're not posting places and creating content just to waste our time. So one of the things that I think kind of stands out from other types of copywriters that you may hear from is I really focus on market research. That's probably something you've learned about or have been doing in your business to create products, and all that same research that you're doing in product creation to fill gaps and identify what your customer needs are the exact kind of things that you can use to create content as well. So with that in mind, let's jump right in. So I'd love to know if this is something that ever has crossed your mind before, which is, what do I even send to my email list? When, as I mentioned, I talk to a lot of business owners, this is like the most common thing that I hear in response to email marketing. And when I first started copywriting my first year, this was not a problem that I knew that my audience had. So I jumped feet first into copywriting and I said, okay, great. I had these clients who were like sending me, hired me to write their emails. And then I'd go, all right, send me your outlines, like, or what your email ideas are. And they'd go, oh, I don't have any. And I found this problem like month after month where they were like, they wanted someone to write their emails. They didn't want to be the one doing it, but they also were struggling to keep me on part of their team because they didn't know what to say. And so I was like, well, I have to fix this, right? Because A, I need clients. I need to make money. But B, I don't want these people to like feel like they're wasting their time and like throwing random things out there. And then I'm writing emails that aren't really even doing anything productive for their business. That's my husband calling me. Sorry. He knows that I'm on a call. So I started offering this as a service in my business with planning. And it started with, a workshop, and it developed into this one-on-one strategy sessions. And this has kind of become like a big part of what I do working with clients. So, and so you know that I'm not just making things up and saying random things. I've actually done this exact framework with lots of different business owners. I love how none of my lines decided to be in the right place for the presentation, but we all get the idea. And a lot of the feedback that I hear from people is they feel like after they use this framework, which I'm going to walk you through today, they feel like I can finally be on top of my content. Like I'm not writing blog posts last minute. I'm not writing emails last minute. I actually know what's coming in front of me. And I actually feel like it's strategic and I'm not just like making things up again, throwing spaghetti at the wall, hoping something sticks, hoping something converts. All right. So with that in mind, here is the process of planning 30 days of content. Typically when I do like this workshop style, it's the exact same strategy that I'm doing when I do this one-on-one strategy session style. This is the exact same framework that I use. I tend to go a little bit slower because we stop and we do it together. So you might want to rewatch this, like the replay, if you feel like I'm moving fast and you'd rather pause and things like that. But I'm hoping today to give you the framework that you can do on repeat. A lot of times when I'm sitting down to plan this with clients, I'm doing it 90 days at a time. I'm going to give you 30 days because this is like something I can teach you real quick right now that you can walk away with, but it's the same thing that you can do, rinse and repeat. You plan May, rinse and repeat, same process you're going to plan June. Okay. All right. So there's 3 steps here. The first is that we're going to plan out our big ideas and our goals. The second is that we're going to create the roadmap for our emails. And the third is that we're going to get specific on like the exact topics that you'll be sending for those emails. All right. So here we go. Here's how it works. When we start with the first part, which is thinking like big ideas and goals, these are kind of the 4 different areas that I walk clients through and I want them to think about. And the first one is business goals. And I'd love to know, first of all, if you can like raise your hand, but I'd love to know how many of you are planning business goals for yourself. Not like I'm going to make $6,000 this month, but like I'm going to focus on putting up my website. I'm going to, okay, cool. So we all know business goals, right? And hopefully we're making them for ourselves. What happens a lot of times, though, is people see a disconnect between their business goals and the content that they create. So I'm going to go with the goal, Tracy, I believe I said your name right, that she said, right? Which like, I'm going to build my website. And then this summer, I'm going to start my email list. Okay, great. If that's our goal, how does that relate to our content? And some people might say, well, it doesn't. That doesn't relate to my emails. It has nothing to do with emails. And yet it does, right? Because if I'm going to be writing emails and I know my website's going to be coming up and I know I'm going to be starting my email list, what do I need to do with my emails? What do I need to do on social media? What do I need to do with my blog post to get those things set up for my business? Right? I'm probably going to have to talk about my website. I'm probably going to have to create a welcome sequence. I'm going to have to do some introductory things in my emails. So all those things relate, not every part of it, right? You sitting down to actually write your website may have nothing to do with your emails, but it does have something to do with it. So for this example, I'm going to pretend that like my goal for the next 90 days is I'm going to double my summer sales. And so I broke it down into 3 mini pieces. That's how it personally works for me. If you'd rather do month by month goals, great. I like to do quarterly. So I might say, okay, in May, I'm going to work on visibility and warming up my audience. That's how I'm going to double my summer sales. And in June, I'm going to host an event that leads to like a paid product. That's how I'm going to work on doubling my summer sales. And then in July, I'm going to do some sort of special promotional period, right? Or maybe I put like a product line on sale. That's how I'm going to work on doubling my summer sales. So all of it comes back to that main goal. And then I'm going to decide when I'm content planning, what do I need to do with my emails in order to support working on visibility or warming my audience or hosting an event. Okay. The next thing we're going to look at is upcoming launches. So this is just to make sure you have like all your ducks in a row before you sit down and you do your content planning, right? Before I sit down and I write my emails for April or for May, I need to know if I have anything coming up in my business. So do I have new products coming out? Am I revamping products? Do I have a webinar? Things like that. Another thing to think through, and this again goes back to the market research that I talked about, is customer wants and needs. So if you've been on TPT for a while, which I imagine many of you have been doing it for at least a little bit, right? You've gotten some information about what your customer wants at different times of the year, what's selling really well. You might pay for like YDP and things like that, where they tell you what is performing well and what you should send out. It doesn't matter how like invested in the metrics you are, as long as you can go in and look, here are my top sellers, you can get an idea of what your wants and needs are with your customers. And so then you can decide, okay, in the summer, what typically does well for me? Okay, what problems can I help my audience solve? What might they be facing during summertime? Or whatever time period you're sending out those emails. What do they need from me over the next month, 2 months, 3 months? And then the last thing to look at is your existing materials. And I think this is a category that a lot of us forget to think about. We like always want to create new content. But the reality is you probably have old freebies, old emails, old blogs, old products, right? You don't need to create a new product every time, right? Hope you don't do that. You have products that have been selling well. So you go back, you pull those out, you promote them. So that's also a great thing when you're looking at your email planning, that you can ask yourself, what things do I already have accessible? If you do have an email list that you've been emailing for a while, you can go back and look at your emails from the time period last year, see what performed really well. Is there a way that you can revamp it and reuse that email this year? Okay. So the next thing that I like to do after I've kind of gathered my thoughts here and decided what are my goals, what my customers need. And again, I typically am doing this in a 90-day with a lot of clients. For the purpose of this workshop, I'm going to plan like 30 days at a time. So I'm going to give you an example of 30 days, but again, we can do this in a 90-day period. So don't think that you have to lock yourself into just planning 30 days at a time. But what I like to do next is then kind of map out any important holidays that might be coming up in the month that I'm going to be planning. So for the example, in this presentation, I'm just going to use June. And so I wrote down some holidays that are coming up, and then I wrote down like the event that I'm going to be doing. So you might have noticed, let me move my face out of the way. Oh, went back too far. Here I said in June, I wanted to host an event that leads to a paid product. So, okay, before I start planning, I'm going to need to identify an actual date that I'm going to be doing that, right? So that's why I put here in my little mini planner, as I like to call it. Okay, I decided June 16th, that's the day I'm going to host this event. So when I sit down to plan, June 16th is going to be very important for me in planning because I'm going to have to make sure that I'm sending emails to get people prepared for the workshop. I'm going to have to be promoting my paid product afterwards. A lot of that's going to be built around that. If you don't have some sort of event that's going on, that's fine, but you may still want to be aware of different holidays, especially if you are a seller who has like seasonal or holiday related products, right? Or if you just want to avoid sending emails on certain days. I have a lot of clients where we just avoid, like, we would never send an email on Father's Day because we're like, we know her audience isn't going to open it. We'll just wait until the next week, or we'll skip and do it on a different day. Okay. Any questions about that? All right. So at this point, we've hit kind of this section. We're planning out our big goals and ideas. Now we're going to start to move into the roadmap. And this is where a lot of times with like when I'm doing a workshop or I'm working with clients, the light bulbs kind of go off because this is the framework and structure that I use when I'm planning emails. If you haven't seen or done any workshop with me before, feel free to stop and ask me any questions about this because I know sometimes I have people who get confused in number 2, but I'll do my best to explain it. But let me know if you have clarifying kind of questions. Okay, so when I'm planning my emails, I plan 3 different types of emails. The first one is the nurture email, which is probably what you're most familiar with, right? These are your weekly emails that you're sending out, or maybe bi-weekly or whatever your time period is, your time frame that you're sending them at. And these are the ones where you're sending people to like blogs, YouTube, podcast, social media, freebies, or maybe you're just giving them general information about something. This is the focus of this is literally just to warm up your audience. It's just to get them engaged in your content. It's to build your authority. It's not to sell. It doesn't mean that you can't mention paid products inside of these, but the focus is nurturing. I'm going to skip over to the last one, and I'm going to come back to number 2. The next one is income generating. So these are like what we consider our like salesy emails, right? These are the ones that we're like, okay, I got to do the hard sell. I got to say, I want you to buy this thing. So whether that be you're promoting a service, a product, a TBT sale, a workshop, or if you're trying to get them to opt into something, I sometimes consider that income generating because it is like a very impactful like CTA. You're saying like, go do this thing. Okay, those are pretty clear. Where some people get confused because it's not something that we typically think about with content planning, but it's actually one of the best ways to plan our content is when we include build emails. So a build email looks very similar to a nurture email. I'm sending people to blog posts and YouTube videos and podcasts, and I'm giving them information, but the intention behind it is very different. The intention behind a build email is not to just be like engaging. The intention behind it is to get them ready to buy something or to participate in something. The build emails are going to focus on like agitating an issue, answering a question that they have, poking out a problem. So for example, let's say that like my income generating email is me selling some sort of like ELA task card bundle. Okay, what if I'm like want to do this really big launch of this thing? I'm like, this is a new bundle. I want to like really get people hyped about this and maybe make some like quick sales from this. What do I need to say to them before I send them the income generating emails to get them ready to buy? What problems might they be dealing with that I need to address? What objections might they have to using task cards, right? Maybe my audience is like, task cards, that's so like 2020. I need something more engaging. Maybe I can get them excited about task cards. Like, what do I need to say to them so that by the time I send my income generating email, they're ready to buy, or at least they're more likely to buy, right? So that is the purpose of a build email. So let's say, I'm going to use a task card example again. Let's say that the problem a lot of people reported is that when they use task cards, their kids like aren't engaged and it's like a big behavior. So I could poke at the problem by saying, like at the top of the email, maybe I'm talking about the struggle. I'm like, it's so difficult when you use task cards and your kids aren't paying attention and you feel like they're off the charts and you're like, is this even a worthwhile activity? Later in the email, I can kind of solve it by leading them to like maybe a podcast episode I did talking about ways that I help with behavior issues when I use task cards, or like some sort of behavior system that I use, or how I make task cards more engaging. So I'm not selling them the product yet as the solution, but I am starting to discuss the solution. And it's very likely that if they go and click on a blog post that I send them to, or a social media post that I made and I send them to that I probably do mention the product somewhere in there, but it's very like mildly selling, if that makes sense. So it's like the soft sell. Sometimes in build emails, I will mention like in a PS, like, hey, by the way, if you don't want to create your own task cards, right? I have this bundle that's going to be coming out. But the focus isn't selling. The focus is on really addressing what a lot of the market research is saying that your clients or customers are facing. So again, like agitating an issue, that one's a little bit harder with like task cards. It's kind of more something we think about with like service stuff. But like show transformation, for example. I could talk about like what my classroom looked like before and after I used this task card bundle, right? I could use an example of my own classroom. So I'm not selling them the task cards yet, but I am just talking about how it's worked in my own classroom.
How far before your product do you send the build, and how many? I know it's gonna be different for every thing, but
Yeah, that's a good question. So if we're talking about, let's say you want to do a flash sale, like we have the new product coming out, I want to do like a quick 2 to 3 day flash sale, maybe like a week or two before. Again, it depends on how many emails you're sending. So if you're sending like one email a week, you might start like 2 weeks before. So you got like two build emails in there. If you're doing like a longer sale, probably not a TBT sale. Those are really hard to build up to. I feel like TBT sales are just always hard to like get noticed in the email inbox. But let's say you're doing your own sale on your website, like a spring sale, and you want to focus on a couple of products, you might do a little bit longer of a lead up if you want to talk about like why your spring resources are like so important to have. But really, it's also just good to play around with your own audience and see how they respond. At the end of the day, you're not doing yourself a huge disservice if you spend a couple weeks doing build emails, because again, it's not like you're selling to them for 4 weeks on repeat, right? You are nurturing them. It's just the intention is to build up to that income generating email. Okay, I want to show you some kind of examples too. So I'm going to walk you through like how I would start actually planning this stuff with kind of the example I was using previously. So again, if I go back here, I said my business goal for June was I was going to host an event to lead to a paid product, right? A free event is going to lead to a paid product. I said that I was going to host the free event on the 16th. So I'd already pre-planned this. Now, when I go to my June calendar, what I always start with is income generating emails. So when you first sit down and you're looking at 30 days, 90 days, whatever it is that you want to look at, you're just going to put down the days that are like, okay, this is like an event or something I'm selling. Again, you can put like TPT sales down for income generating kind of stuff too, because you know that's going to be a set time in your schedule where you're going to have to promote something. So I have that down on my calendar. And then when I go into my next set, I know everything needs to build around this. So when I then start to lay out my next sets of emails, my build emails and my nurture emails, I'm going to have this income generating event in mind. Now, in this example, I kind of like my thought process was I'm emailing more than once a week. So if you're only emailing once a week, you may only have like these kind of emails going on here. For this example, I have like I'm emailing twice a week for most weeks, right? Again, it's going to be up to you and your capacity. There's nothing wrong with doing weekly emails. I did that for a long time. Okay, so if I have my free event, then I say, okay, 2 weeks before my free event, I'm going to spend building up to that free event. Notice I haven't put any topics here yet. All I've said is this is just what I'm doing. I've just marked down on my calendar. Those are going to be build emails. I've just identified them. And then after my event, I'm just nurturing. Just focus on getting back to just engaging, getting them to reach out, getting them to read my blogs or whatever it might be. That's how I start with my planning. I don't go any farther just yet. Any questions about that so far? Okay. So then what I do from there, after I have mapped out, like, okay, I'm going to do my build emails, right? I'm going to do my nurture emails here. The next thing that I do is I go through and I put in my topics. So I'll kind of walk you through some of the topics I identified for this one. So for example, I put the goal for June, right? We're doing the paid workshop. I know that maybe for this like fake business I invented in the scenario, my customer wants and needs are that they're struggling to stay on track with their business goals and they're feeling overwhelmed with their summer to-do list. That's something that I've heard in the market research that I've done, that I've heard in conversations that I've had. So as I build up to this free event where I'm going to be talking about like goal planning, goal setting, and I'm going to upsell to like a digital planner. Um, I just realized I changed this in the middle of it and I didn't say that, but I did change it whenever I was editing this. So in my build emails, let's say I'm going to send a podcast episode about when plans go sideways and how to re-strategize. I also spelled re-strategize wrong. Grammarly doesn't really catch a lot of my ears, apparently. So again, I'm building up to this. It is a nurturing sounding email because I'm not promoting anything in here. I might be promoting the free event and like inviting them to come to it, but I'm not selling them my digital planner yet. All I'm doing is talking about my podcast. But the intention here is that I'm addressing a problem that they have, which is that sometimes when you plan things, the plans go sideways. So what do you do with that? And I'm getting them ready for the free event where I'm going to help them plan better. And then in the next email, I'm inviting them to the free event. So this is a free email. I'm building up to this. I'm getting them excited and I'm getting them ready. Then for my next build email, it's another podcast, why goals have never worked for you and how to fix that. So this might be an objection that they have. This might be something they're always telling me, why I don't need to buy another digital planner. Goals never work for me. I never follow them. Okay, well, I'm going to address that. I'm going to show them how you can do it differently and it is possible for them to work. But hey, you should come to my free event and I'm going to help you do that there, right? And then I do another invitation email. Then when my free event comes, I'm focusing on that. I may be sending an email the day of the free event. I may not be. I just like to put my income generators like on the schedule, but I probably would send one that day just saying like, hey, here's the day of my free event. If you haven't gotten a ticket yet, it's going live in a couple hours. Come and join. And then I'm going to send 2 emails afterwards where I'm promoting that paid product. Okay. And then I decided after I'm going to do some nurture-based emails. So usually after some sort of like hard sell, whether it be like a long launch period, whether it be a long sales period, I do think it's nice to like have a cool down a little bit in your email instead of just being like sell, 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 right? That can be a lot for people, especially when you're sending a lot of emails like 3 days in a row. So the next email that I'm sending is probably going to be kind of fluffy, a little bit more on the chill side. So my next one, I'm like, let's just celebrate. I'm just going to come in and say, here are some great wins that I saw at the event. If you missed it, grab the replay. Something really simple. And then down here, I decided to do a freebie swap. So that was part of my overall goals. I'm saying it is my fake business here, but my overall goals of like doubling summer sales and working on visibility and a great visibility strategy is freebie swaps. So I thought, why not? Another kind of fluffy email to calm down from a sales period. Let's do freebie swap. I get together with another business owner. They get something free. I don't have to write an email. Awesome. It feels a little bit more low key. I'm not just selling, selling, selling. Okay, what do you got for us, Chris? Are you planning the next couple weeks? Are you looking to plan the next month?
I could use 30 days of content.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's chat. So let's say we're going to kickstart your email list in May.
Mm-hmm.
You said, and this is actually a great topic because this is something a lot of people come to me for with email marketing. They're like, well, actually, I've ghosted my list for a while. How do I get back in there? So this might be a great way, either whether you've ghosted your list or you're kickstarting a list, they're kind of similar in how you would kind of get started. Um, So let's start with kind of the business goal then. And we can just do like 30-day. So if you had like a 30-day goal for May for kind of the TBT side of your business, what would be something you have in mind? Is it like
For the
revenue growth? Is it just re-engaging that list? Is it getting
it
prepped
would
for
probably be
something?
revenue growth
Okay.
because as I've not been emailing or interacting, the growth has subsided.
Yeah. Okay, so we want to do some revenue growth. We also know, though, that we haven't engaged the list in a while, so we're definitely gonna have to work on some people who are a little bit chilly and cold. When you were emailing consistently, how often were you emailing?
Twice a week.
Twice a week. Okay. All right. Any sort of upcoming things happening with your TBT business in May? Like, do you have any new products coming out? There's not any TBT sales. There's a teacher sale in May, right? It's the
Um,
teacher appreciation sale, right?
yeah, yeah, there probably is, but
I think
I
there
don't
is.
know.
I can't remember when the dates are. They're probably like the first week. I feel like it's usually like the first Tuesday, Wednesday, or something like that. So let's say we're doing May. We're gonna assume, I'm gonna assume the TBT sale is probably in here. So this is like exactly how I would walk through if we were doing this like on a call together. We're saying this is our TBT sale, and our goal is revenue growth and re-engaging our list. So if we're doing twice a week, what days were you typically sending?
Tuesday, Thursday.
Tuesday, Thursday. All right. So usually I just kind of go through and I mark those so I don't forget like what days we're sending. Because I will. And we may decide, since it's been a while since you emailed, you probably, and maybe you do, maybe you're like feeling it and you want to jump in doing 2 emails a week. You may be like, probably should do a slower start and you want to do like one a week or two and then one and kind of go back and forth. But let's just say for the purpose of this, we're going to do two. Okay. We actually have a Thursday here. Alrighty. So if we're thinking revenue growth, let's go back to like customer wants and needs. And I'm sure every one of us are going to have some kind of similar things in the teacher world in May. What do people usually want and need in May? It's usually like all the end of the year stuff, right? It's like they're tired and they're like, give me something easy, give me something fun, right? That's kind of like the big things that people want. Did you have or do you have a blog post or YouTube channel or anything like that where you're doing long form content?
Blog.
Blog. Okay. So, TPT sales, we kind of could get into that if anyone wants to, but to be honest with you, I don't think that there's like any sort of like amazing way to do a TPT sale email. I've tried a million different ways with clients. They kind of all are a little bit poo-pooey. It's just everyone is sending emails on those days and they're just really hard to get noticed. So let's just skip that for now and it's just going to be what it is. But let's say we're planning this out. Um, and you don't need to actually really remember all these blog posts off the top of your head, but let's assume that you have some blog posts about end of the year stuff. Do you remember any that you might have about end of the year?
Yeah, I have one like it's 5 or 10 end of the year activities for your math class.
Perfect. Okay. So maybe we decide like one day we're going to do end of the year math activities here. Oops, I'm just moving everything around. Okay. And then in this, it's like kind of more of a soft sell, right? Because we're going to be sending them to the blog post. And in there, you're probably talking about your paid products. So this email is kind of functioning almost like a mini build email because we're like building up to the next one, which is here we could just straight up talk about like your best selling end of the year math activity. And like the next one is like, you know what, Thursday, I kind of warm them up to the idea of end of the year math activities. And in this one, I'm going to promote my best-selling math activity this time of year. And so in that one, I want to dive into like, what are the benefits? Why is it perfect for this time of year? What are people saying about it? All this kinds of goodness. Any other blogs you can think about on the top of your head that might have to do with end of the year?
I have a couple blogs on math projects, like a stock market project or a Shark Tank project.
Okay. So again, knowing that like a big problem with the end of the year is people need, I feel like projects are always popular at the end of the year, although I always found them really crazy when I was teaching. But they're very popular because it's like something you can do over a long period of time, right? So I can address maybe like a problem in this email of like, you just like need something to stretch you to the end of the year. And so I can point them to a blog post on end of the year projects. You could also do one where you do like almost like a mini kind of case study. So if you're still in the classroom, or maybe you had a lot of pictures of projects that you did with your students in your classroom, you could do like a little kind of a case study where you show one of your projects in action. And then you can kind of soft sell the actual product here. Product. So again, we're kind of building up to the same topic, but just coming at it from different directions. So it's just different points of messaging, right? Because some people might read an email where they're like, oh yeah, I do need something that's going to stretch me to the end of the year. Some people might like seeing it in action a lot better, and that's the thing that's going to hit home and make them want to buy. So we can hit at that same product line just from different angles. And then again, we could do like another income generating email where the next one we just like straight up say, hey, you want to buy this end of the year product, this end of the year blanking on project, or just talk about your end of the year project products. That's like a products. That's a mouthful. But do you have other bestsellers that you kind of know off the top of your head for May? So we talked about math and projects. Any other big ones that you feel like sell really well around this time of year?
My book.
Okay. What is your book about?
It's about differentiated instruction for math teachers.
Okay. Okay. Do you feel like that's something they probably are looking for more at the beginning of May or before they go into summer if they're like looking to read something throughout the summer?
It sells best over the summer.
Okay. Ooh, okay. I'm kind of thinking then. I almost want to back some of this up a bit. Maybe we could back up a few of these, like take them back. And then what we could do, maybe like right at the end of May. And again, I'm doing this without like really even talking to Chris or asking him questions, just for the purpose of an example. So
All right.
I would ask a lot more questions if we were actually sitting down on a long call, just to kind of give the purpose, just to show an example. But it could be fun if maybe like at the end of May, we did some build emails where we're like kind of getting them excited about this like PD opportunity in the summer, right? You're about to have some time. We're talking about maybe some things that they're dealing with in their classroom. We can do almost like a mini reflection of like looking back on this year, what is the one of the things you struggled with? I bet differentiation was somewhere at the top of the list, right? Of like trying to handle all the different needs in your classroom. And we can kind of address that. And then maybe at the beginning of June, we do like a little launch couple days or like a launch week, right? Where we just send a few emails back to back, getting them really excited about the book and kind of hyping them up about that. Or you could do like a free event where you address some part of the book in there, maybe like one chapter, you kind of help them with something in the free event. And then you say, hey, if you want more assistance, I have the entire book, and that's something that can support you. So that's kind of one way you could do it. Okay, my hope though is kind of seeing this in action as we're going is helping a little bit more to see like how we can kind of lay out those different pieces. And again, you probably want to take this much slower when you're doing it and you're actually planning it on your own. I'm just mapping it out kind of quickly to show how those ideas can come together and showing you that as I'm doing them very, very often, I'm not sitting down and the first thing that I put, on May 27th is actually what ends up being there. A lot of times my clients and I were shuffling things around. It's why I like doing things in Canva. It's super easy for us to be like, ooh, okay, this would be really great. Okay, let's shuffle this up. Let's move this here. Let's make this happen. And you can move things around as you're going. No content plan is going to be concrete. There's a very good chance you're going to plan 90 days. You're going to get halfway into your 90 days and go, actually, I need to move this down a little bit, or I need to move this up. And that's normal and that's totally fine. And that's going to happen a lot of the time. So don't think that it has to be like once you put it down on paper, you're committed to it. And that's the best. Say here, I know I gave Chris a freebie that is a quarterly planner. I have it actually like right beside my desk right now. That's a great place to kind of map out your emails or even just map out your goals in general. I like to use it to map out like things coming up in my business so that when I'm sitting here and someone asks me like, "Hey, Branda, can you do this thing?" I'm like, "I don't know. Let me look." No, I can't, or yes, I can. So that helps me. It also is usually like the big things I'm aiming for in my business. So I have like a email challenge coming up this week. And so that's a big thing that I've been focusing on. And so that's been on my kind of calendar. But I just also want to mention that if you're looking for another place to connect with, working with a copywriter or someone for email help, the Copy Huddle is another place that you can connect with me. Always happy to connect with you on Instagram. I'm always in the DMs talking with people and chatting, or on Threads if you want to find me there. But the Copy Huddle is a membership I started this year, and it's a more affordable version than a retainer. So paying a copywriter or retainer can often cost hundreds and if not thousands of dollars. And I know that's not in everyone's budget, nor is that where you always want to prioritize your money. And so Copy Huddle is kind of my alternative to that, where you can get one-on-one personalized copy support. So when you're sitting down to write your emails every single week, you can pass them off to me and you can say, "Hey, can you look at this before I send it out? Can you look at my blog post before I post it?" And I'll give you feedback. I'll help you with the messaging. I'll help you with whatever you might be struggling with. Um, a lot of the people that I work with right now, they're like, "I just don't even know how to transition from the build to the sell. Like, can you help me do that?" I also help them with metrics and things like that. So inside there, every single month, we do the audits. That happens every single week where I'm looking at um, your emails or your copy and providing feedback. I also do content planning, very similar to this, where I sit down and I help them with ideas of planning. We have office hours. I have little like copy challenges to help you tackle different areas of your copy, data checks. And we have a little Slack community where we chat in there and I answer any questions that you have. So that's kind of another place to connect with me if you're like looking for some sort of copy support that's more budget friendly. But if you're not, totally fine with that too. There are other ways to connect with me. You have the freebie. You can find me on my email list. I do email once or twice a week, depending on the week. And I like to send in lots of goodies there. Like I said, I have a free event that's actually starting tomorrow. So you are definitely welcome to sign up for that. I posted about it on my Instagram today. So you can grab a free link in my stories. It's basically an extended version of this presentation. So if you want to get some more support as you start plating those emails, definitely grab a ticket to that. And yeah, social media is where I hang out other than email.